The Fed15 podcast is presented by Serving Those Who Serve, a financial planning practice serving federal government employees and retirees all over the country. This podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended to be taken as financial advice. All listeners should consult their personal advisors before taking any action. The opinions expressed by our hosts are their own and do not reflect the views, policies, or position of either Raymond James or Serving Those Who Serve. Securities are offered through Raymond James Financial Services, Inc., member FINRA SIPC. Investment advisory services are offered through Raymond James Financial Services Advisors, Inc. Serving Those Who Serve is not a registered broker-dealer and is independent of Raymond James Financial Services, Inc. Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of the Fed15 podcast presented by Serving Those Who Serve. Each week, we will discuss the latest news and info that Feds need to know in 15 minutes or less with a little holiday cheer this time of year. So whether you are a seasoned federal employee or you're just starting out in your career, the Fed15 has got you covered. So grab your coffee, grab your flavored salted caramel water if you're addicted to it like me, kick back, and we will tell you what you need to know, but you might have missed this week in the federal space. We are your hosts, as always. I'm Katelyn Murray, and I am joined by the festively emblazoned Mr. Dan Sipe.
Indeed, I in case somebody's only seeing a part of me, I'm not predicting a shutdown, so that's not why I have the black on. So here's the reveal. I love smart Yuletide T-shirts, and there you go. If you're not getting it right now, wait a minute, you'll catch it in a second. So a little mirth and math there. Very
cool. I love it. I like my Christmas
sweatshirt
with the side
that's hoe cubed.
I like my Christmas with the side of algebra, just for the fond memories. So
you want your financial people to be good at math. I mean, I'm sorry, you do.
That is true. That is true. And I do think that, when I think this has shifted a little bit now. Now we are emphasizing STEM education, I think, more, and we've made STEM cooler. But I know when I was growing up, I would always say that I was bad at math, and I am absolutely unequivocally not bad at math. But that was a thing because I was good at the arts and I was good at writing and I like to read a lot. I would have this thing that I was bad at math, but I was great at chemistry. I was really good at STEM. It just wasn't a thing. So I'm glad that we've kind of addressed that. I think for kids now, it's very cool to be in STEM.
Well, I'll give you one that will definitely give you a smile. My beloved son, Colin, okay, smart kid, good athlete, whole thing, said out loud with his mouth to a gentleman who was talking to him about what he might do in college.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, nah, he goes, man, I really hate math, but I like physics. And this gentleman was an official from another school. And I just saw his face kind of relax.
Fascinating.
I said, don't even go there, sir. Just roll with it.
Yeah.
He doesn't like math, but he likes physics.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's it. That's kind of like when my brother was little, he couldn't stomach the concept of anything other than chicken, of any other meat. We gave him turkey all the time. And we were like, this is chicken. It's fine. I think I gave him ground beef one time and I was like, this is chicken. He's like, really? I'm like, yeah, it's different. It comes from a different, it's like Australian chicken. It's fine. Anywho, we have an interesting episode today. We're going to talk a little bit, at the risk of, giving people, PTSD around the RIF conversation. It is important that we know with the year that we are, drawing to a close on with 2025, it's important that we kind of educate around preparing for RIFs, being prepared for RIFs, RIF 101, kind of how these different things can impact you, right? So Dan is actually going to talk with us about a strategy called bump and retreat and how that works in the context of a RIF. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about HSA and FSA enhancements that are taking effect in 2026. We have some exciting changes to both HSAs and FSAs under FEHB, and I'm excited to kind of highlight those for my folks who are making use of those plans. But before we get to that, Dan, talk to us a bit about bump and retreat.
Absolutely. And folks, here's the thing. We were literally swamped the first 6 months of this year because so many people needed help. And so many people wanted some one-on-one conversations. So these are things we were talking about that we wanted to make sure we codified and got out into the universe in writing because, Katelyn, did you know that 1.2 million people have visited our website over the last 12 months?
I did know that because I think probably about 3/4 of those people scheduled meetings with me.
I think that's entirely possible. I think that is entirely possible. So we're recognizing that we now have, a very generous sized user base here. So we want to get these things out there because this is pretty much evergreen stuff as far as these rules go. So we talked a lot about, getting on priority rehire lists and things like that. But there's also something called bump and retreat. And we have talked about that a fair amount. And the funny thing about it, I'm sure you experienced this as well, Katelyn. We would bring that up with our feds and they would invariably grimace because they didn't want to eat somebody else, to survive. They didn't want to bump somebody else out. And in a perfect world, we never want to do that. However, you do need to understand what your rights are and what the rules are so that you can watch out for yourself and your family too. Okay. So we're going to get some key terms that goes with bump and retreat. So some of the terms you'll want to understand. Competitive area. That defines a pool of employees that are competing during the RIF. Competitive level identifies the interchangeable positions within that area. The agencies must establish both before a RIF begins. And I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, although I'd really love to. I think there are many examples where that didn't happen. And that's why we are seeing arbitration actions that are only now coming up to having their hearings. Senators for Medicare and Medicaid will have one in February. So I think there's going to be some legal action going on for quite some time. So, but continuing forward, agencies have to set that up. So they also have to have a retention register that ranks all the affected employees by tenure group, veterans preference. That's really important. Length of service and performance. Okay. A higher placement in all those provides stronger protections when positions are reduced. So what are the outcomes? The possible outcomes could include reassignment to another position, placement in a lower grade, or hopefully not separation if no assignment rights apply. So how does bump and retreat actually work? So here are the general rules. The assignment rights activate when an employee would otherwise be released from their competitive level. And the rights apply only within the designated competitive area. We talked about that. That's established by the agency. And only if a qualifying position exists for at least 3 months at that appropriate grade and schedule. So what is bump? That allows displacement of an employee with a lower retention standing at the same grade or lower level within the competitive area. So that's what a lot of our feds, and it warms my heart that their hearts are so big for their fellow feds, but it would mean you're bumping somebody out of their spot. Retreat would allow you to return to a previously held or essentially identical position within the same agency or competitive area. And it's typically limited to 3 grades lower. However, disabled veterans are permitted to go up to 5 grades lower. I'm not saying any of these are ideal outcomes, but it's still important that you understand them. Okay. So what would determine your place on the list? First up is tenure. Career employees have priority over career conditional employees. Veterans preference. Preference subgroups receive higher ranking. A service credit. Longer service strengthens that retention standing. Performance. Higher ratings. Elevate position on the register. Accepted service, which would follow agency-specific variations, and verification of your agency's policy is important. So while that's great, Dan, thanks for the facts and everything here. And the other thing to remember, folks, we're usually amplifying one of our articles, so your notes are pre-taken. Okay, you can go right to stwserve.com and head over to our blog section. You'll find it there. So now the important part, what do you do if another RIF rumbling begins? And even if there's a rumble, start looking into it. Okay, so confirm the accuracy of your service comp date, your veterans preference, your performance rating, your grade, your schedule. Then request definitions from the competitive area and competitive level from your HR. If they're going to do it, you're supposed to have it. Compile a list of your previously held positions that may qualify for retreat, including grades and duties. Okay. Be proactive. Review all vacancies. Since assignment rights apply only if qualifying positions exist, so you might not have to bump anybody. There might be an open spot. And also consult HR, union representatives, or advisors for clarifications on the rules and timelines. Again, we hope we don't see any more of this, but I think we've all heard little flying rumors, things like that there may be more in 2026. We are going to make sure that you are not caught flat-footed because nobody expected what we would have seen in the early part of this year. Well, now, to quote Roger Daltrey, we won't get fooled again. So that's what I got, Katelyn. What do you have for us?
Well, so I've got a little bit of sugar to go with your spice today. We're going to talk about HSA and FSA enhancements that are taking effect in 2026. So last week, we talked about, I'm pretty sure it was last week, we talked about the increased contributions for your TSPs and your
favorite time of year.
Absolutely. More money that can be stashed away for future you. This topic is similar, actually. So 2026 is seeing some pretty significant updates to HSAs and FSAs. There are some changes going into effect on January 1st that it is important that you know about. And I know we are past open season now, but hang in there because I want to make sure you're getting the most out of the FEHB plan that you did select in open season when you did all that rigorous research and you reviewed all the options that were available to you and you selected the best plan and you attended the free STWS 4-hour FEHB and Medicare webinar and you did all of that great work and you plan to do it again next year because we're going to offer it next year. So making sure that you are making the most of the plan that you have. So we'll talk about HSAs first. It's no secret. I love HSAs. I think they are wonderful. If used correctly, I call them like the unicorn, the tax unicorn of financial planning because you contribute money to your HSA on a pre-tax basis. That means the money's coming out of your gross pay before you pay any taxes at the federal or state level. It goes into the plan, it gets invested in the plan, and it grows tax deferred, meaning you're not paying any capital gains tax, you're not paying any tax on that growth, phantom taxes on that growth as it is growing. And then lastly, when you pull it out of the HSA, if you pull it out correctly and for eligible expenses, you don't pay income tax when it comes out of the plan. So if you're following along, we put the money in tax-free, it grows tax deferred. We pay no taxes when we pull it out. That means you never pay taxes. You never pay taxes on that money. And that's the dream. That's the dream every day, right? We're talking about, clients come and ask, how can I pay less taxes? There are very, very, very few loopholes. The HSA is one. So
sure.
If this plan makes sense for you, and we've got tons of resources on the website for how to evaluate whether an HSA makes sense for you or not based on your own individual health needs. If an HSA makes sense for you and you are in a plan that supports an HSA, it can be a really good financial planning tool. Now, for the first time in 2026, my folks who are on bronze or catastrophic plans via the Affordable Care Act marketplace are going to be eligible to open and fund an HSA. Previously,
wow,
ACA plans did not meet the criteria for HSA qualified high deductible health plans, and now they do. So you may have access to an HSA that you didn't realize you had, right? Or your kids might. So put a little bee in their bonnet. The other thing is that an expense, so I mentioned earlier, if you pull money out for eligible expenses for the HSA, those are typically like your co-pays for your doctors. If you got to pay for glasses like me, because I'm just not out here seeing for free, that would be an eligible HSA expense. Sunscreen, also an HSA eligible expense. And in some cases, I think contraceptives, also HSA eligible. There's a big, cool list. It's great. You can Google it. There is a new item added to that list, though, for this year, and that is direct primary care expenses. So DPC fees, basically, this is like a flat monthly membership fee. It's usually like $50 or $150 per adult. And that covers unlimited primary care, preventative care, basic labs. There's lower rates for kids and seniors. And then there's some like registration fees for prescriptions or major procedures that are nested in and are now HSA eligible. So the example I have for myself for this, my dentist has a fee that you can pay monthly for preventative care. That would now be HSA eligible under these new rules, which is
nice.
Cool. Yeah. There is a limit on it though. So if you're paying really high DPC fees, and those are, I believe, set by the practitioner, the limit is $150 per month for individuals or $300 a month for families. And they are going to index that for inflation in future years. But that may be a qualified medical expense that you don't realize that qualifies, basically.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yep. The other kind of expansion here, and it is very much focused on expansion and not contraction, which is great. That's why I said it's a little sugar to go with your spice. Telehealth is now fully compatible for FEHB high deductible healthcare plans. Yes. So previously, telehealth, you had to pay out of pocket until your deductible was met, and it wasn't like an eligible expense. High deductible health plans now can cover telehealth visits before your deductible is met, which means that many FEHB high deductible health plan enrollees could get $0 telehealth visits. So kind of a big deal there. And then lastly, well, actually, that was my last update. So now I just have a reminder that your HSA contributions, I think the first thing that you want to think about, well, since it's not open season, you want to look at your healthcare plan and see if you can do an HSA. Okay. Here's the thing. You can open an HSA anytime after open enrollment. You don't have to be in open enrollment to open an HSA. You can do it now if you didn't previously have one, as long as you were in an HSA compatible high deductible health plan. Okay. So you may be in one of those plans that I'm sure you researched thoroughly. You may be in one of those plans and you can do an HSA, but if you don't have one yet, you can open one. You don't have to wait till next year to do that. If you're not in one of those plans, now might be a good time to kind of research HSAs and see if it's something that is applicable for you. Because while it is a great planning tool, you want to also make sure that your healthcare needs are met. Okay, so changing gears just a little bit. FSA, F as in Frank, F as in finance, F as in flexible spending account. FSAs and HSAs get confused all the time in clients' minds. Yes, the healthcare savings account. That is they both can technically be financial planning tools, but that is the long-term, I'm going to put this money into the HSA and there's an investment component. And I can put up to the annual maximum in it every year and it will sit and it will grow, right? If I don't pull it out and spend it. The FSA, the flexible spending account, that's the one that you've got to spend every year, okay? So your regular healthcare FSA, they are increasing the contribution limit this year. So last year, or I guess this year in 2025, it's $3,300 per year. Next year for 2026, it is $3,400. So they're increasing it by $100, modest increase. And the important thing with the healthcare FSA is you've got to spend it down every year. You can only carry over $680 from year to year. That number is higher for 2026. That's the 2026 limit. $680 is what you've got to spend. If it doesn't get spent, actually, no, you've got to spend that. You forfeit anything over $680. So the example there is if I've got, $700 in my FSA at the end of the year that I haven't spent, 680 of that can roll over, and that other $20, it's gone. Okay. You're also funding this with pre-tax dollars, so it does get you a current year tax break. But the real key here is you want to make sure that you're not overfunding it. So if you know that you typically spend $2,000 on your healthcare throughout the year, you may not want to put $3,400 in because you can't leave it in the plan. All that will roll over is $680. Okay. So we can't build up value in an FSA, right? That's what the HSA is for. There is also this really, really cool thing called the Dependent Care FSA. And that is it's for what it sounds like, right? If you've got kids and they've got stuff going on, you can pay for their expenses through that Dependent Care FSA. So this is for stuff like it covers work-related expenses for care, right, of qualifying dependents. So these are folks who are under 13. 13 is the magic age there, or who are incapable of self-care, right? So this covers daycare, preschool, summer camp, nannies, babysitters, before and after school programs, but it excludes things like overnight camps, educational tuition, beyond basic care, food, clothing, transportation, all that stuff. But babysitters, nannies, day camp, childcare, basically, all of that is covered. So the exciting news here is that the Dependent Care FSA is seeing its first boost in quite a while. The annual limit for 2025 was $5,000. And in 2026, that is moving to $7,500.
Oh, nice.
If you are married filing separately, that limit is $3,750. So just to kind of mention that. So very, very much needed, in my opinion, boost there. If you're listening to this and you don't have kids, congrats. It's very expensive to have them. So having, that boost in the,
but you can't put a price on joy, Katelyn. You can't put a price on joy.
You definitely can't. The Dependent Care FSA, if you're the $5,000 limit, if you're listening to this and you have kids, you probably laughed out loud at that limit because daycare for kids is way more expensive than that. I've seen many situations where folks are paying more for the daycare for their kid than they are on their mortgage. So bumping that up a little bit, getting a nice 50% increase on what you can actually save towards that plan. That's also going in tax-free. It's going to help you out on your taxes, and it's going to be a more tax-efficient way to cover some of those costs. I will give you this grain of caution, though. With the Dependent Care FSA, there is no carryover. So you don't get to the $680 that we were talking about rolling over from year to year, and the Healthcare FSA does not apply to the Dependent Care FSA. You have got to use all of the funds in that plan through the grace period, which stretches until March 15th of the following year. So for 2025, you need to spend all your Dependent Care FSA money until by March 15th of 2026. So you can use funds from the previous plan year to cover expenses, but only through March 15th. So don't overfund it. But again, if you have kids, it's probably hard to do. Very hard to overfund for the dependent care expenses. Okay. So definitely look at those two options, the HSA, well, actually those three options, the HSA, the Healthcare FSA, and the Dependent Care FSA to see if you can be utilizing those plan benefits to help you out with streamlining taxes. Big takeaways here, if you are planning to utilize DPC or telehealth services, you can now potentially cover those costs with your HSA funds, which is going to ease your out-of-pocket burden. If you have an HSA available, an FSA available, or a Dependent Care FSA available, you could be looking at funding those to lower your current year tax burden and make some of those costs a little bit more tax efficient for you. If you are already using these plans, make sure you adjust your contributions to hit those higher annual limits. If you're planning on utilizing those funds in the case of the FSA and the Dependent Care FSA. So be sure that you're hitting our website. This particular article, Ed Zerndorfer wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago. It was back in October, just before we entered open season, but it goes through, how you can be using these accounts for meaningful tax savings and to help manage the rising costs of childcare or elder care, because an elder could potentially be a qualifying dependent as well.
Sure.
But just make sure that you're kind of aware of the constraints around those different plans and make sure it works for you. And if you need help figuring out if it works for you, we're happy to talk with you about that. So
absolutely. Great stuff. So we ate our meat and vegetables and then we got our sweet stuff. Perfect holiday meal. And folks, sorry to say, that's all the time we have for today. But we will be back absolutely next week, bringing the latest updates you need to know to make informed decisions about your career and financial well-being as a Fed.
to make sure that you're here for that episode, do subscribe to this podcast on our YouTube channel or on Spotify. If you're listening over there, we love our Spotify friends as well. That'll help you never miss an episode. And it also boosts us in the ever-present algorithm so that we can reach more feds with this valuable information. And please never underestimate the power of sharing it with your friends and colleagues. If anything in this episode you think would be interesting to somebody that you know, if you think they ought to know about the Fed15 podcast, just copy the link, send them the episode. Having that kind of warm referral to it, I think sometimes makes it more likely that they'll actually check it out. At least it does for me. When somebody sends me something, I'm more likely to look at it.
Well, I'm going to go a step further, Katelyn. I'm going to say this episode in particular should be shared with every single Fed.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
yeah.
Yep.
No. Because every single Fed needs to be ready for potential RIF.
Absolutely. So. And know about the advantages that go with HSA and FSA.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely. So tell everybody you know that's a Fed. And for more information on the topics covered today and more, check out our blog. You can find that at STWServe.com and subscribe to our newsletter, The Weekly Serving. That way we'll push our best stuff to you every single week. You don't have to go looking for it. It'll be delivered straight to you every week in your inbox.
And for those who want to dive even deeper into learning about your federal benefits and financial planning for feds, we do encourage you to join us for one of our complimentary webinars. We are hosting them all the time. We are kicking off 2026 with some really great sessions. Our FERS webinar, all that you need to know about FERS, your pension, the cornerstone of your federal benefits. That'll be on January 7th. That'll be from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. That is a really great introductory session. If you've never done a webinar with us before and you want somewhere to start, that's a great place to start. And also, I hate to mention this just before the holidays, but tax season is right around the corner. And we've got information that you need to know. So our tax planning session is going to be January 15th from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. Both of those will be presented by the fabulous Mr. Ed Zerndorfer, retired career Fed himself and a subject matter expert in this area. He's going to talk about smart and savvy tax moves for feds and really what you should be thinking through there, because the tax side of all of this is very interesting. So those are two great sessions that we have coming up. Be sure to join us for those. If you don't have the time for a 3-hour webinar in the middle of the day, I totally see you. I feel you. For a one-on-one approach, you can reach out to our team directly for a financial planning consultation at meetings@stwserve.com. We'd be happy to talk about how we may be able to be a helpful partner to you in your financial life.
Absolutely. So, folks, thank you for listening to Fed15. I'm Dan Sight.
And I am Katelyn Murray.
And we will see you next week.